What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the Bot Podcast, where we interview movers, shakers, and innovators and talk all things conversational user interfaces. I'm your host, Chad Oda, and today we have an awesome guest, Ryan Begley. Ryan is the co-founder of Eyelevel.ai. Eyelevel is a conversational marketing network for brands. Previously, Ryan has held positions at companies such as IBM on their IBM Watson project, as well as Oracle and JP Morgan. So at that, Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chad, thanks for having me. Very, excited to chat with you today.
Absolutely, man. So before we get started into the more specific chatbot related questions, I always like to ask a rather unique question based upon our guest and their background and some of the cool stuff they're doing. So I was sort of seeing with you have quite a big Twitter following. I was noticing a couple weeks ago. So I was like curious, because there's probably a lot of startups that are watching this podcast that are chatbot or voice related. So can you give any suggestions as far as how Twitter's sort of working to promote the business you're doing and maybe how to do that?
Yeah. No, that's funny that you bring that up. It's Twitter, something that I think maybe 4 years ago, I was a kind of an anti-Twitter.
Yeah.
And I bumped into this guy that was sort of in the same boat as I am, in the sense that he was anti for a long time, but then he sort of discovered some value or some simple truths about the platform. I just make a point of following people that follow me and responding to anyone that direct messages me, and I do it once every couple of days for sure, and I treat it like a way to another channel to promote whatever I'm up to or interested in and whatnot. And I think when you apply that rigor to doing it, sort of dedicating yourself to doing it every a couple of days or every day, people notice, and you can. It's funny that you bring it up, because I was just talking about it to someone earlier today. People do follow you back, and it gets a lot more exciting when you have a bigger audience to kind of bounce ideas off and interact with.
No, absolutely. I think definitely you're doing a great job evangelizing the product you're building. I sort of saw you on multiple channels, and this must have been 6 months ago on Facebook, on Twitter. I was like, who is this guy? So that being said, let's maybe transition and talk about the specific sort of customer need, market opportunity. What is Eyelevel.ai? And, what are you guys looking to accomplish in the space?
Yeah, I mean, so Eyelevel.ai is really sort of you could think of it as the hero brand. We're a company that tries to take the publishers or makers or developers or owners or operators of chatbots and conversational applications and connect them with brands that are and businesses that are really interested in engaging and promoting various products and services with that audience. So it's essentially a chatbot ad network at its simplest. But the idea, and I think the market needs, really sprung out of observations that we as a team made 2.5, 3 years ago working at IBM Watson. We had built a number of very popular, well-used chatbots for the weather company. And we kind of had two observations, I think, throughout that whole process. One is that people are interacting with chatbots at a level that I don't think is fairly well understood. I think people assume that it's just kind of a one and done, or maybe once in a while, but people are engaging with these well done applications quite a bit. The second was, it's really hard to make money. There's no off the shelf easy tools, so it can be tricky. I mean, I have a quote wall where I've collected a number of quotes from publishers and developers and makers that we work with, and tricky, impossible, really hard, ad hoc. I mean, I've heard it said a number of different ways, but it's all kind of the same thing. It's I want to, our partners and our publishers and our makers and the people that we work with, they want to focus on making applications that are fun and interesting and people want to engage in, and that's what they're good at. They don't want to have to go out and market the bots or the conversational applications to brands, and we're, that's just too much. And that's where we come in. We try and make it really incredibly easy for them to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people that might not be as familiar with like ad networks or sort of like how they sort of came about sort of in like the web days, if you don't mind sort of giving maybe like a brief overview of like what does a publisher and what does sort of like an
Yeah,
advertiser,
sure.
what does that mean?
Yeah, so I use the word publisher only because it makes the most sense from a historical standpoint.
Mhm.
That's typically the people that are publishing promotions, ads, whatever it is. They're making something and publishing it out to a community or an audience. And so, you know, in desktop, that would be people that are making websites or writing blogs, or in mobile, people that are making mobile apps. So videos, people that have video following and have sort of a reoccurring channel. And these are people that are they're creatives. They're making things that people like to check out and interact with. And the only way they can really focus on it 100% of the time is if they're able to have some sort of simple path to monetization, or else they can never dedicate themselves 100%. And so in ad network lingo, a publisher is someone that's publishing content, and they will publish some sort of promotional content as well to make money. And then on the other side of a marketplace, you would have advertisers. And so the advertisers are spending money, the publishers are making money, and the publishers are publishing the content that the advertisers are putting out there.
Yeah, so that's sort of like, like old pre-established models of sort of like ad networks and sort of like the new sort of channel that exists now that is not web, but is like messaging, which is like completely ubiquitous now. Like billions of people around the world are using it, yet there doesn't seem to be, to your point, really clear ways up until this point to really monetize that, right? I mean,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. So I look at everything as like in sort of two buckets.
Hmm.
The applications and chatbots and voice and skills and everything is always either going to cut cost for a business or make more money for that business. And right now, I think the predominant use case is post-sale. So automating customer service, any sort of post-sale inquiry with a business, and that drives cost out of the business. So that saves you money if I'm Nike or Comcast. What isn't there is, how do we grow the top line? How do we make more money? How do we sell more? How do we market more? How do we actually expand our brand footprint? And that's not really there today. And that's what we're really trying to help with, is the use cases that are pre-sales, not post-sales. And traditionally, that's how ad networks work.
That's a really good point, right? Because I guess if we look at the buyer's journey, right? So from what you're saying is that there seems to be a lot of application for chatbots right now, post-sales experience, right? Where, maybe I receive, my receipt and like order tracking information via chatbot. But on the front end, it doesn't really seem that there's a lot of accessibility to people just trying to advertise a product or service. That's in a really easy way. Like right now, I'm sure, as you're aware more than anyone else, that there are platforms that exist where you can create like individual experiences on the front end of the buyer's journey with like mini chat or chat feel, but there is like still a degree of like expertise where if a brand is going to invest into something like that, that's still something they have to either learn or, outsource internally, and there's not anything really that, more accessible than that. So I sort of see, the ad network as sort of making it more mainstream, to sort of relate to marketers or advertisers that are already familiar with ad networks, right? They use maybe like Google Ads or
That's
Taboola
right.
or things like that, and then you're putting this new ad network in front of them and saying, hey, like nothing really changes other than the fact that we are transitioning you onto the most popular medium of the 21st century, 2019, but the concepts of publishers and advertisers sort of still stay, where they were, right?
That's right. There's definitely, for us, there's a lot of educating the market.
Yeah.
There's educating our publishers onto like, what is an ad in this new format. And so we have to really think about like, conversational ads. What is that? And help define that for them and make it simple, because they, people don't know. And then on the other side, the advertisers, they're like, well, we get ad networks, but what is it in this world? And so then we kind of have to sort of educate them on, here's what's different and here's what's the same. The same are the terms and the concepts and the value chain itself. What's different is the actual ads themselves, the value of the engagement. So, when we try and lean into the channel itself as much as possible, because it's bi-directional, because it's a discussion between two, a chat or a conversational app and a person. There's a lot more back and forth, and that doesn't exist in mobile and desktop and so forth. And so being able to really harness that nugget of value and really relay it to the advertisers is certainly a big challenge, but it's also like, that's the excitement. That's where the innovation comes from. That's why we're so bullish on this whole space and really trying to, like, step by step make improvements to the overall platform, but overall, drive value back into the ecosystem as well.
Yeah, you make a really good point, right? I mean, I guess if we even think back to television commercials and the influence those had on, just ad networks of web, when ad networks evolved, and you sort of look at the format and it's very like direct response copywriting. And then we finally get over to messaging medium, which could, almost be completely different than a lot of the conventional advertisements that we see today, right? It's not direct, copywriting. It's more over conversational copywriting that actually is like, you're not talking to a consumer, you're engaging with them, right?
That's
and
right.
How do those new sort of ad units sort of exist, right? And I think the point that you're making is the fact that, there is a lot more that goes into building out that sort of conversational advertisement, but I think the market opportunity is significant, right? Like, we look at the numbers and it's like, billions of people have migrated over to, whether it's chatbots or similar channel being voice, in a very short amount of time, right? And it's almost like, to a certain extent, this is nothing new, if we think about globally, right? But if we look towards the east a little bit, like WeChat
Yep.
sort of came before all this,
Yep.
and $60,000 cars are being sold on that messaging
Yep.
platform. So I think it sort of gives us like an inclination of what is to come, in more Western markets. So I think it's a really fascinating opportunity. So I heard you mention something, and we also talked about this previously prior to this call, about sort of the origin of how this sort of came to be. So I sort of want to start back to the origin now that we sort of talked about your sort of focus in the present. And for those that don't know, Eyelevel.ai just raised $2 million. So you guys are really taking off like a rocket ship right now, and hitting the ground running. But sort of going back to where this started, I remember you had said, you guys were building a chatbot for the Weather Channel. And the fascinating thing for you said, was the amount of user adoption was just unprecedented.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we made two, so like, we all worked collaboratively on a project for a year, and two high-level insights we came away with. One was just the users themselves are interacting on levels that you would never. I mean, it was very 2.5 years ago, very surprising. People saying, "See you next week," "Thank you," "God bless you," uploading pictures of their kids. People spending a lot of time trolling chatbots. I mean, that's fascinating if you think about it. Someone's spending all their time to mess with a chatbot. It's like, well, this is incredible. Like, and you can't do that with a mobile app. You can't troll mobile app. So it was sort of eye-opening to think, wow, people are really engaging with these things at a level that I don't think anyone really suspected that would be where it was at. And so you fast forward 2.5 years later, and it's like, I don't know that it's well known still, but we and I think there's a lot of folks that are very in the space right now appreciate that there's a different type of relationship with chatbots than there is with typical mobile apps and typical websites, or it's a different medium, and there's different interactions, and it is very encouraging, I think, that the level of interaction and the devotion and the allegiance to the various conversational applications. The second insight was that it was really hard to make money. And it's like you sit there and you think, wait, I got 5 million people that are talking to this conversational application every day. If that was a website or if that was a mobile app, it would be a multi-million-dollar mobile app.
Yeah.
But it's hard to make $100. So fast forward, like that's what we're really we're building something that we wish we had 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's actually, that sort of gives me sort of an idea about, we look at the mobile sort of app revolution that had, preceded this one, and to build a mobile app, that's very expensive, very time consuming. Whereas you look at messaging, you can sort of spin something up a lot quicker, development costs a lot lower, but the differential is with this here is really expensive to build, but the upside is well established. We have like apps like, right? Whereas on messaging right now, you have all the engagement, but we just haven't necessarily cracked the code yet.
That's right.
We'll have it. So I think it's maybe sort of an obvious thing at this point that, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and we see that.
That's right. So I was going to say that there's typically 3 things that you need for an ecosystem to take off. You need the tools and the platforms to build and run things. So like YouTube, you need the editing tools and all the different, like, the technology to be able to curate and build and run stuff. And then you need distribution. That's the second leg to the stool. So how do I distribute this thing that I'm building and running so that it can reach a big audience? And the third piece is always monetization. How do I make money now that I'm distributing it? How do I make money? How do I validate monetarily the investment of time and energy and keep going? And what it does is it liquefies innovation. Once people can make money, you see innovation just take off. People start getting very creative. And so, like the mobile app video games, like Draw Something and Words with Friends and even like a Snapchat, right? It's like all based on eyeballs, and no one's ever going to invest the time to innovate at that level unless there's easy ways to make money along the journey. And so that's really what we're trying to do is provide a channel to make money for the people that want to innovate and make experiential conversational applications.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting to note as well that, a lot of the enterprise initiatives to build mobile apps, now we're seeing like 5-10 years on, I think Gartner just put out a statistic last month that said most of those are not ROI positive, right? And now moving into this next generation here, it's almost as if some companies that maybe didn't get on that app train are just going to totally bypass building an app and go directly to the place where there's the most engagement. So, I think that being said, also pointing out that, this journey is not always clear cut to monetization, because I know that you guys had started out with Cashbot, which was like a core component initially. And if you don't mind sort of sharing that journey, because it was sort of like the successive steps that you guys went through.
Yeah, sure.
That ad network.
So Cashbot is still there. Cashbot, we think of it like the product that the publisher, developer, maker persona uses. And kind of where we started, we kind of did like the startup shuffle, if you will. It's sort of putting up a landing page describing what it was that we thought we would build and seeing if people would sign up and had any interest in it. And then once 50 people had signed up, talk to 3 of them and interview them and say, hey, if we build an API that can do this, would you use it? Would it save you time or money or energy or no? And it was just I think probably about a year of customer user research just to understand the problem space. Because honestly, a year and a half ago, we thought ads are probably the worst thing that you would put into a chatbot. But what we've learned is that what people care about most are relevancy. So our makers care about 3 things. They care about how much money they can make, will their users love it or hate it, and how hard is it to implement. And that's something that we learned over the course of the last year. And it was through Cashbot and like really publicizing this attempt to help people make money. And the name is kind of funny. People laugh at it. It describes exactly what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to put cash in your pocket for for your chatbot, and it's pretty straightforward. And so the reason why we did a name pivot, if we did anything at all, it was a name pivot, just because from an advertising customer standpoint, Cashbot probably a little bit too raw, the name, but the tech, the branding, it's all still there.
No, definitely. So maybe if you don't mind talking about, along that journey, what were like some of the initial successes that you saw early on, that sort of drove you guys to continue in that direction? Because I can only imagine it's just like, okay, we tried this, okay, we got some feedback, we're going to try this and this. And what was that? What were those sort of like aha moments for you guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there were really two. One was that, yes, making money is very tricky with chatbots. And I think it's interesting. The evidence is somewhat anecdotal, but I feel as though the types of chatbots that are out there have really crystallized around the same use cases, whereas a year and a half ago, there was a lot more creativity. And so I think the insight around that was that people that are creative and working on these things and publishing these things, there was no way to make money from it. And then they're like, all right, well, I'm going to go do something else with myself. And so what we're really trying to do is like breathe life back into that, what was there. And I still see it quite a bit, but really get the same sort of excitement going. That the other insight is definitely what works well and what doesn't. I think that, when you think of so ads, I use the term ads, and it's a loaded term because people think of like annoying, disruptive things that a pre-roll when you're trying to watch something on YouTube and it interrupts you, or something you're trying to read an article and it's like it's popping up in front of you. We actually believe quite strongly at this point that we can show far less ads and have much more a higher success, a higher conversion, drive more value to the advertisers because of the bidirectional nature of chat. So you can actually say, for the use the weather example, if it's going to rain, if I ask a weather chatbot, will it rain in San Francisco tomorrow? And yes, it will actually. Do you need an umbrella? And I can say yes or no. If I say yes, that's a promotional opportunity that I've actually signaled I'm interested in hearing about umbrellas. Tell me about umbrellas. That's a way higher intent user. That's a way higher value advertisement. And it's not something that's necessarily annoying because I've already signaled I'd like to hear about it. This is something that's very unique to conversation, right? And that I think is one of the core insights, is that this is very different than mobile and desktop and video, because it's a one-way, there's an expression, spray and pray, or, broadcast. It's one way, it's unidirectional. Well, this is bidirectional. And so to be able to say, for instance, we're working with Fitbit. We have a whole portfolio in our network of health and fitness chatbots. And we can say, hey, are you interested in hearing about a wearable to, enhance your workout regimen? People that say yes are the best possible person to show a Fitbit promotion to. And Fitbit loves this idea, right? Because they're not tarnishing their brand with annoying pop-ups and all the, the sort of what's there today. The various channels to advertise and promote are annoying, but this is different. So I think that is a big insight and a big aha moment that we had in the last year, was that this is being able to lean into the channel itself is going to really drive both the difference, but the ultimate value.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because there's almost sort of like a historical trend when it comes to advertising and marketing, right? It's always been like, how much insights, how much data do we have on the people that we're targeting, right? I mean, like, you can think back to like radio. It's like you have like 5 channels when radio started. It's like, this is the news channel, this is rock and roll, so the young kids are listening to this. We got jazz, so like the 40, 50 are listening to this, and you could target ads based on like that limited targeting criteria. And then we've seen like over the years, right, we got TV, there's more channels, and then we finally got internet with programmatic advertisement. But even that wasn't contextualized to where we have it today with conversational user interfaces, where it's not, we're guessing, right? I think a lot of the targeting prehistorically we're trying to make an informed decision on what ad units to run based upon what information we have. But it's not like there's a continued conversation to really understand if that is true, right? Whereas with conversational user interfaces, it's just like we can have that conversation to see if it's going to be a good fit. And if it is, then it's, I think the end user actually sees it as more utility and valuable, not as much as like an advertisement as we used to think about advertisements. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic on how that sort of role between brands and consumers, I think, has the possibility of shifting very drastically here.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, one thing, another insight is that people like to answer questions.
Yeah.
And people are very open to the idea. I mean, third-party studies, it's like hands down, it's very established at this point that people are willing to provide information about themselves and their wants and their needs and so on, if it will better what they're seeing and getting over digital properties and so forth. So people are more than happy to say, I'm interested in buying a car, or I'm not interested in buying a car, if it will cut down on the car advertisements or give them better car advertisements. And that same concept applies to the channel, is that, people are happy to answer a question and say, yeah, I'm shopping for an anniversary present. And that's ideal. And you're no longer wasting money following them around the web, being creepy.
Yeah.
You're showing them something they're actually interested in.
Definitely. So we sort of talked about, the current state of where you guys are at, right? You guys are looking to scale. You guys just secured $2 million in venture capital. And we also talked about sort of the origin story, right? Where did this sort of idea manifest from, right? So looking sort of into the future, what's your sort of vision for the company? Where are you guys looking to take this? Whether it be extended feature sets for increased targeting, for for advertisers, or maybe is there something else in the cards for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the way that we look at it is that natural language and conversation as a UX UI is we're just at the beginning stages of this, and it's just like mobile and video and so on. You're looking at probably like a 10-year to 15-year expansion in this space. And as long as that's happening, we think and are very, very committed to the idea that it's always going to be driven by the long tail, the third-party developers, the folks that are just looking to take the tools and build stuff that's cool. And that will get adopted by the bigger enterprises and so on. And as long as those communities are out there and there's still growth in this space, we're going to always try and be here to help people make money. I mean, I really do look at our job as like, we're almost agents, like talent agents. And we're just out there trying to help our talent make money. And that's going to happen for voice. That's going to continue to happen for I mean, natural language as a platform or as a UI and a UX is going to be, and it is today, in VR, AR. It's going to be in video games. It's going to be in your car. It's going to be everywhere. And, we certainly are betting that in 10 years, it will be a predominant, if not the dominant, UX, UI, how people engage with technology. And if that's true, then, we want to definitely be right there along with all of it to make the path to monetization as simple as possible for the people that are creating these amazing applications.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think it makes sense, just looking at the trajectory of where consumers are going today, right? And, I think that's how brands should be making informed decisions on what they should invest in, specifically the UI and UX of conversational user interfaces, right? Like, people are moving to these channels in droves, right? But I think you also point out something else that makes a lot of sense, which is the fact that to build an ecosystem like this, it's going to take time. And I agree that we're sort of on this starting point, or maybe a couple miles into the race at this point. And, you're right. We need the tools, and the tools are sort of slowly, coming to fruition, whether it be platforms, whether it be, natural language processing tools, or, dialogue management or ad networks. And then we also need to have that monetization aspect. And that's, it seems to be the component that is not completely there, but I think there are several use cases. And then also, you also mentioned it's like we need the channel, right? And I think that the interesting thing that I think people need to see is like, it's not just the aspect of the channel, but I think something you alluded to is understanding what is that native content, that native experience, whether that be a copywriting thing or whether that be, some sort of, even graphical element that's included that makes it compelling for the user, right? Because I think you would even agree 100% that you can't just take like a, email copywriting from something that was an email promotion and just take that and slap that into a chatbot. Like that's not going to work. And
no, absolutely not.
Yeah. So speaking to sort of those, limitations and obstacles, like what do you see in your opinion as sort of like, significant obstacles in the space right now that you think that, need to be tackled for us to really get, this idealistic vision of what conversational could be in the future?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that we're well on our way. I mean, there are, if you think about these legs to the stool, there's, for chatbots in general, there's, I think, over 200 like build and run platforms. So there's some big players, Chatfuel, ManyChat. I mean, they do a great job of simplifying it and making it applicable and addressing a market that's, these are non-technical people that are putting together these amazing experiences, and that's awesome. I think that's exactly where it needs to go. And then there's a huge amount of platforms that are specifically focused on enterprise, post sale, they're approaching it like, I'm going to go after this vertical right here. It could be like cosmetics, something as granular as that. And these are all great. What's interesting what's happened in the last couple of months for us is that some of those platforms are coming to us and approaching us and saying, hey, we'd love to be able to, create some sort of integration or a partnership, because we would gladly open up our platforms to lots of other users. Until now, there was no way for them to make money, so it never made sense for us to do that. So I think that, some of that is going to have to happen. I think some of the acknowledgement that, if you put these tools in people's hands, they're going to make amazing things. We don't know what they are yet, but we just have to like give them the tools and let the market kind of build itself up. And that's really our approach, is to just make it easy and then let people go do what they're best at. And, they're going to have some chatbots that are, or conversational applications that are crappy, and then you're going to have some that are amazing. And I find them all the time. And I talk to them all the time. These people are making these incredible things. And until now, no way to make money. It's just one of those things where, I don't even know if there's a right answer. It's just, let's make a tool to make money, people to build a business around their creativity and their innovation, and then see where it goes. And that's when you're always the most surprised and pleased with how things develop. It's just, the market will just go.
Yeah, definitely. There are like quite a few platforms, and it's interesting to sort of look at the last several months. You see platforms being acquired, you see a lot of them going out of business. And, I think we're seeing sort of that hype cycle really, come to fruition, right? We saw a lot of hype, a lot of people got in with these like platforms and ideas. And now, the market is really, the test of time is showing what was actually tangible. I think it's healthy for the market, because now, like you're saying, you're getting platforms that are successful reaching out to you guys saying, hey, our platform works right now, and we're maybe selling our platform on a consumption model, but we want to sort of bring monetization to the next level. And I think it's just really interesting to see that life cycle right now. It should be really encouraging to not only the developer community, but also to brands who I think have been sort of sitting on the sidelines. And I think a lot of them, and definitely curious to hear your thoughts, a lot of them sort of got mixed signals. In 2014, 2015, it was just like, okay, everyone's being sold on this, new revolution. And, I think expectations were like here, and then delivery was here. And now we're sort of 3-4 years on, And now I think brands are beginning to sort of really warm up to the idea, if not already starting their projects. Like, what do you sort of see brand sentiment looking like, since you sort of had a seat at the table for several years now?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's two ways to approach it. And up until now, it's always been a brand would build its own conversational application.
Yeah.
And if you think about like the mobile as the parallel, right? That's like, Wells Fargo going out and building their own mobile app. And the mobile app did the same thing as the desktop website. And so it's like really like, all right, all you're doing is just allowing me to access the same stuff through a different channel, which is okay. But so I think that the same sort of scenario or the same sort of elements have popped up when it comes to conversation, is that people build a chatbot or a skill or a conversation application of some sort because that's what people were saying you should do that year.
Yeah.
And okay, we did it, and now where do we go from here? And I think what's started to happen is those brands and businesses that have traditionally relied on eyeballs to either sell ads or subscriptions or promotions or something that was not necessarily selling their product, they have started to go, wait a minute, we have all these users that are subscribed to our service, our conversational application every day, and they're interacting, but there's nothing, there's nothing being driven. There's no business. There's no incremental value add to the overall, revenue landscape. So what do we do? And that's where we've been working as closely to those sort of higher end branded chatbots to kind of be that solution for them. I think in general, everyone's very it's fairly accepted that conversation as a UI and UX, natural language as a UI UX, is coming. It's here. It's never going away. And it's like people are starting to wait. I think, let's see how the dust settles a little bit. But for the most part, people are very excited about the notion of a new platform that's not driven from the big players, where there's a little bit more control, or it's a different type of interaction. And the feedback that we've gotten has been phenomenal from our advertising customers and clients. I mean, we have, when we did the press release, I think last month, we had 45 customers logos that we can talk about, and we've signed 15 in the last month. And so, we see a lot of momentum from our advertising partners, and a lot of interest in the channel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're spot on with that. It's taken time for things to sort of turn around for this, but like you said, this isn't going away. This is the next, paradigm, so to speak, on multiple fronts, whether you're thinking about from like a input device, or you're thinking about it from like a marketing channel, or even customer support. I certainly agree with that notion. So for you, your personal opinion, where do you sort of see the future of like chatbots and voice? Doesn't have to be specific to Eyelevel, but we see things like Alexa, we see messenger chatbots today, we maybe start to see customer support bots. Like, where does this all converge for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it converges. It converges in the future when things are sort of, they work. They just work. I love the Alexa as a sort of a descriptor, because everything that Alexa does, for the most part, when it first came out, was relatively doable across multiple different technologies and platforms, and it wasn't like groundbreaking for what you could do with it. But what was groundbreaking was that it worked. It was the first time that you could say something to a speaker and a mic, and it would hear you and understand what you just said, and at least acknowledge that it understood. And that came from a lot of hardware innovation, but also like a very concerted effort to do it, to make it work, and to build out like that third-party ecosystem with the skilled developers and so on. And then Google came along, and so now you see it's kind of like battle royal, like these two huge companies with these massive IT group departments. And I mean, it's just insane the amount of money that's being thrown around to make these two competing companies work in the long term, and they're going to get into cars, and they're going to get into different physical settings. But I think the like how chatbots play into all of this is it's all the same technology at the end of the day. It's all the same back end. And the reason why we're focused on chatbots and, some of those less sophisticated, I don't even want to say less sophisticated, but sort of the more mature airspace is because it is the most mature and it is the most ubiquitous at this point. And there's the most action there right now. But everything that we're doing is very aligned with the vision that this isn't where it ends. It's going to keep going and going and going. And it's, people are going to be talking to their cars in 2022. I mean, we're literally 2 to 3 years away from fairly ubiquitous conversations in your car. And when that happens, the innovation will not come from the car companies. It won't come from Amazon. It's going to come from third-party developers who are just making cool stuff. And they only will make cool stuff if they know that there's a way to actually make some money from their cool stuff. And so really that's our whole vision on how the future unfolds.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really maybe like eloquent way of putting it, is just saying it just works, right? Because I think
it's amazing, right? It just worked. And then people just started buying it left and right, and Alexa became a big thing. And it wasn't rocket science. It just worked finally.
Yeah, and I think that sort of maybe paints a picture of like what the future has in store, right? These things sort of just working in concert, and it's less about the interface, and it's more just about the user's intent, and that intent getting fulfilled, and it working, right? And not having to learn how this dashboard works or like this new interface, and that sort of that sort of convergence sometime in the future. And I think the interesting thing to look at is, like, if that's what the future looks like, today, what do we have, right? We have, most bots are very like task driven, right? So it's typically user initiated. And then maybe the sort of next, generation, which you could maybe say are sort of like things like Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant, which not only are sort of reactive to the user, but also proactive, where it like can look at your data on your phone and say like, hey, it looks like your flight is this time here, and it looks like it was delayed. So there's a level of proactivity in that as well. And I sort of see the ad network that you guys are sort of building fitting into that sort of proactivity from like an advertisement perspective, right? It's not just like, we're sending stuff to you, but it's intelligently understanding what the user's intent is and hopefully providing it to them, when they most need it, right? So that's sort of, I think it's all sort of like this nature of, can we extract contextual insights as we gather more data, and potentially even more complex unstructured data like conversations, and turn that into something meaningful that's always on. So
That's right. And it really is, I think, one of those things where if you give people the tools, then they're going to chip away at the problem and find the right approach. And so right now, from like a monetization standpoint, what we want to do is just be able to give people the easy access to be able to monetize, and let them figure out what's the right approach, and provide best practices and help kind of guide it to a certain extent. But ultimately, when as this scales bigger and bigger and bigger, the market's going to find like the right approaches to deliver promotional content, and incentives work well and kind of driving the right types of behavior. So we're very excited about kind of how this is all shaping up.
Yeah, to that point, actually, in regards to best practices, do you mind sharing any best practices that you guys have sort of seen in regards to, it could be like anything in relation to conversational user interface?
Yeah, I mean, it's from best practice in terms of how to make money. I mean, people, and there's kind of a negative connotation. I'll say up front, there's kind of a negative connotation as it pertains to making money, and so everything I say is under the take it from the perspective of, I don't think that there's anything wrong with making money, as long as you're transparent about how it's happening and so on, and you're not misleading users and sort of acting with any sort of malicious intent. So all that said, a best practice, I think, is hands down leaning into this channel and into this format and utilizing for what it's good at and where the differences are. And that's really being able to ask questions, to get reactions, to have users tell you what they're doing or what they're interested in, and using that to come back and say, would you like to hear about this? Or are you interested in that? We work with a number of different publishers that have reminder services. So their users will say, like, set a reminder to go shopping for anniversary. And users that say, I want, they're preparing for an anniversary coming up, they love getting some sort of promotion related to anniversaries, because they're in that mind frame. That mental model exists. And it's not perceived to be negative at all, which is, from a best practice standpoint, keying in to what the content is, the chatbot, what the users are saying and doing, flushing that out, and then asking their permission to show them something. Users love that, and it works very well. And people, every month I actually really enjoy this. I will send out money to our publisher communities, and I can kind of tell who's doing well, who's doing, it's a big list at this point, but I can see that, like, this developer or this publisher made this much money last month, and they've made double that this month. We're sending out checks for $5,000, to a big group of people each.
Yeah.
And these guys, it's interesting to see, it's interesting to watch, it's exciting. And these are people that are, like, very, they're thrilled because they're actually able to build make a living out of what they're doing and what they're passionate about. And hands down, all these people are doing it by not, spamming. It's the opposite. It's asking permission to show some sort of promotion. And when you get a yes, or you get an acknowledgement, yes, I'd be interested in hearing about that, then showing.
Cool. Yeah. I'm curious, like, are you able to share, like, any trends as far as, specific markets, or, like, different things that are converting the best right now? Because I heard you mention cosmetics, but if that's sort of under wraps still.
No. In general, I think that you can think of it two ways. There's themes, there's content themes like cosmetics or athletic wear, and then there's friction associated with something like something that generates money. So we pay everyone by the click. But our advertisers have to see value, or else, we won't have a repeat customer. So ultimately, it has to convert to something that is interesting to their business. So from a theme and what's working standpoint, I think in general, mobile app downloads are certainly do well because it's low friction, and most Messenger users are already on their phone. But it's interesting. We do have, like, niche e-commerce advertisers that are promoting athletic wear, or like a Fitbit. Like, that's pretty nichey. Wearables, I would never have guessed that wearables would do well through chatbots, because it is high friction, and it's like, a specific type of buyer, but it does quite well. And so, I'm always encouraged when people ask me, like, hey, what kind of chatbot should I build and get an audience going so I can, take advantage of this? I'm always like, health and fitness is a great one. Health and fitness, because it's a daily thing. Every day you care about your health. You wake up and did I go for a jog yesterday? It's very much a relationship that they form with these conversational applications.
True. No, I think that's really fascinating to hear that, right? It's anything from, sportswear to wearables. Do you guys, like, have any, like, idea about specific demographics that, are sort of, maybe
do better than others?
Yeah, specific trend of demographics that you guys are seeing are using these chatbots and converting more so than other demographics?
Yeah, so some of this is always going to be confidential, but I think in general, and we haven't been around long enough to kind of tease out like specifically, like overwhelmingly, I could tell you this or that. Yeah. I think in general, like everything that's consider that most users are going to be on their mobile phones. Android is the vast majority of OS on planet Earth. So things that are targeting an Android user, but an iOS user typically is a more valuable user from an advertising standpoint. So, you know, it's kind of, there's a lot of variables there. For the most part, I think that younger users are more valued from an advertising standpoint. And I think if I had to like say if I had to make one comment, I think it's much more about the chat bot or the conversational application itself than the users. A great app, a great experience will beat any sort of user, you know, cohort, group of users or a cohort and whatnot.
Cool. No, I really appreciate the insights. I think that's really interesting and sort of provides some, you know, flavor to the fact that you guys are running this ad network on messaging, and it's like, hey, we're seeing things across the board convert, and it's not just what you guys would think, you know, would just maybe be only digital products, but it's like physical products, you know, like wearables that sometimes can cost like upwards of like several $100s. I think that's really fascinating to hear that. But then at the same time, you know, sort of looking to, you know, WeChat and, you know, some of those other things, like not unheard of. So it's good to see that we're seeing some of that same validation in these markets here. But switching gears a little bit, you know, for like people entering the space or people looking to continue their education or, you know, just really understand conversations, and also what you guys are doing, like, do you have any recommendations on like resources or books or things that have really helped you out on this journey?
Well, I mean, are you asking about like a publisher or someone that's looking to start building a chatbot or a conversation application of some sort, or just like startup people?
Yeah, so I guess I would say both actually, right? So I think for people that are looking to leverage your platform, and then also people that are just looking to get into the bot space generally.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from people that are like listening and are interested in like, you know, building an application of some sort. I think that Chat Fuel and ManyChat and to a certain extent, there's a number of platforms out there that are very geared for the less technical person. And this is ideal. And you know, people, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to learn about product and get something out there, get some users, start getting some feedback, and start iterating and put some time in and like start to make it valuable. And you'll quickly be able to tell if it's valuable. So I don't know that there are great books to help this type of person. I definitely think like being on Facebook or, you know, I know ManyChat has like a Slack channel. There's a bunch of, it's so resource rich. It's like the best time in the history of technology or anything really to try and, you know, check something new out and explore a different avenue in your life, because it's so plentiful and there's such great high quality people that are all working on this stuff that it's super easy to pick it up and get going. From the startup stuff, you know, like running a new business, I mean, this is something that we have, like our team is certainly, we're not experts of startup by any means, but there's a bunch of great books out there. I like the Peter Thiel book. I think it's 0 to 1. There, you know, it's actually, I promote a lot of them on Twitter just because I've read them or I've listened to the audiobook and just love a lot of like the core concepts and things that they talk about. There's Hooked is another great one. Building products that people become addicted to is a phenomenal book. I'm a big believer in just kind of like building a cool product, a great product that people love and the business kind of works. You know, that's like the most important thing, is just do that and the business stuff will figure itself out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense on like multiple fronts, right? Yeah, there is a huge community for the chatbot stuff, and then, you know, generally speaking, there's a lot of good books. 0 to 1's a great book on startup related things, and also for people that are, you know, interested in using your platform. You know, what is there any specific information or videos?
Oh yeah. So we, I mean, that's one of the things I think that we've spent about as much. I mean, we spent a lot of time putting out content to help people answer questions and get familiar as quickly as possible. So we have probably 15 different video tutorials, blogs, tutorials on Medium. So our Medium channel, Cashbot, you can go to our Facebook page, Cashbot.ai Facebook page, and there's tons of videos, tons of blog links. You can reach people directly by just creating an account, and a Drift widget will pop up and you can ask questions that way. Our developer documentation page is really comprehensive and has links to pretty much everything you'd ever need in a million years. And it's an ongoing thing. So every 2 weeks, there's more content that's getting pushed out. It's really one of the core focuses is just helping navigate this space. So we definitely put a lot of time and energy into making sure that there's plenty of content that's out there.
Cool. No, I think that's awesome. You guys are doing that. I think that's always sort of a imperative, especially in like sort of emerging ecosystems. So I think it's
100%.
really cool that you guys are like really spending the time to be thoughtful about that for the ecosystem.
100%.
Yeah. So that being said, I just want to give you the floor. If you have any special announcements, you want to talk about with Eyelevel, or maybe where people can hear you guys speak, whether you guys might be at conferences or at events. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think in general, it's if you are a maker or a developer, or you're on a team, or even if you're just interested in the space, what we're doing is pretty simple. We're just trying to help people make money from their creations, and so we're very easily accessed. And I encourage everyone to create an account and check back often. Sign up to our newsletter, which is on our homepage, cashbot.ai, and get in contact with us. Drop us a note on the Facebook page or in the Drift pop-up, or send us an email at support@cashbot.ai, and you'll have someone from the team get back to you pretty quickly. So yeah, just the more the merrier. Let's get as many people excited and try and put as much money as we can into people's pockets.
Oh, cool, Ryan. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests this question because, I think more than anyone, you could probably attest to the fact that, as you go into emergent technology and you sort of pioneer to build something great, there's a lot of times, ambiguity, and, sometimes things don't always work out, and then things do work out. So for you, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you inspired to sort of continue this path?
I genuinely, it really comes back to the fact that we were users with this problem. And I grew up in the Bay Area. I have so many friends that have done startups and done their own companies, and it was never anything that was very interesting to me. But what was interesting to me was solving this problem, because there was no other way to solve it. So we had to kind of build it ourselves. And so that's really, I think, what keeps me motivated. I think in general keeps our team motivated is there's this huge group of people out there that we can really help. And that's a real meaningful thing to kind of wake up every day. And that's kind of your high level North Star goal, is to help people, build a business and make a living out of something that they're really interested in. And so talking to our publisher community and writing checks and sending money to people that, to a certain extent, this might be their full-time job now. And that's a really, really, meaningful thing to kind of, work on every day.
Cool. I love it, Ryan. Well, at that, Ryan, I appreciate the expertise. I appreciate the insights, and certainly I appreciate the time that you spent with us on our podcast today. And for all the viewers watching, definitely go check out Eyelevel.ai, and we'll definitely have you come back again.
Awesome, Chad. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Take it easy.
Okay, bye.